Welcome to another edition of Substack Live. It's been a hot minute since we did one of these, but hit the road from Western New York to Foxborough, Massachusetts for some Patriots stuff. Figured we'd open it up right here outside of a statue. Let's see if we can find him here. Actually, here, I'll just walk right over to Tom. You can see him here on the Substack Live. There he is, the GOAT, Tom Brady statue. I got to say, they did a much better job on this statue than, Lucille Ball and Jamestown, that initial one. Don't Google it. You'll be horrified for the rest of your life, traumatized for sure. I got to say, this statue is much better than that one. And Dwayne Wade, that was pretty rough, right? Cristiano Ronaldo, that was rough. But yeah, it's been a good week out here in Patriots country. It's an interesting team. I mean, this was a dynasty for 2 decades. They've been through some hard times. The end of Belichick was rough. The Drake Maye experiment was even rougher. So trying to learn about that transition to Mike Vrabel, Drake Maye, and they signed a bunch of guys. I mean, they had money to spend, obviously, on that rookie contract for the quarterback, and spend they did. Milton Williams, Robert Spillane, Carlton Davis, Morgan Moses, a lot of guys, Harold Landry, a lot of guys that they really believe can bring that Mike Vrabel culture to life. So we're going to explore all of that at golongtd.com over the coming weeks and see how this team does. They got Pittsburgh Sunday, Aaron Rodgers coming to this stadium right here. We'll see how that one shakes out. And look, if you're a team on the rise like New England, I think this is a game that you have to win. I mean, this is a great early test that the Steelers are going for broke. We've talked about it here on Substack Live and Go Long, that decision to roll with Aaron Rodgers, and they paid TJ Watt. They got Cam Hayward. They're going for it, whether they have a realistic shot or not. But the Patriots are an interesting team. Pretty kind schedule. A young quarterback who, in my opinion, there are some eerie similarities to what we saw to Josh Allen in Buffalo in terms of timeline, right? The year 2, they were able to sign some players. They're able to get a coach in Josh McDaniels, who was right there with Tom Brady, the statue behind us. I was just talking to some players in the locker room. Josh Dobbs is backup, and he said that they're watching Tom Brady clips all the time. I mean, what better quarterback to study? What better coach to have in that room than Josh McDaniels, somebody who knows exactly how this offense comes to life at an elite level. We got some people here on Substack Live. If you have any questions at all regarding the Patriots, regarding the Chicago Bears, a team we've written about plenty, and anything, fire away, and we'll get to everything that we can. I also want to get a mailbag going soon, so if that's preferable, be on the lookout for that. Yeah, last night, Bills, Dolphins. I thought the Dolphins fought. I thought that they showed a little heart for Mike McDaniel. It was looking like it might be one of those 45-3 kind of games, or 7, I should say. Miami did score first early on, but they showed some fight. I don't think Mike McDaniel's the problem. If you're going to pinpoint somebody, I'd suppose it would be the quarterback who teed one up to Terrell Bernard late in the game when they were driving. Tua has not justified that contract, and that's probably putting it mildly. This is probably the team, New England, that the Bills would be worried about, if anybody, in the AFC East over the coming years. I mean, this is their division to win. I think the Bills are a team looking to hit that simulate to January button that we reference often, because nothing really matters until then with the moves they made on defense, with how they feel about their offense with Joe Brady. Everyone eats. But New England's coming. When will they be ready to contend? That's unknown. But I think that Mike Vrabel is somebody who knows exactly what he's looking for, the type of player. Dan Campbell and the Lions, they broke this down for us a few years back when we did a story. It's not necessarily a coach giving that rah-rah speech. And we saw those in Detroit out of Dan Campbell, giving the rah-rah speech to get a player to run through a wall. Like, that is part of it. But I don't think you can just make a player tough, make a player want to bite off a kneecap on Sunday. You've got to have that in you. And it's getting harder for NFL teams to find that type of player. Let's be real. It's a different day and age. Morgan Moses, he's a 34-year-old for the Patriots, right tackle. We were talking about this a little bit just now. This generation of player coming in with the NIL money. Look, players should be paid. They should have been paid a long time ago. But it is such a wild west that it is changing the mentality of the Gen Z college athlete, 5-star. If something goes wrong, I can just transfer. I'm getting paid anyways. Who are you to tell me what to do once you get to the NFL? There's a lot of that with Caleb Williams in Chicago. We chronicled all of it in part one of House of Dysfunction. I mean, he is the poster boy for all of that. It's tougher to find the player who will respond to adversity in the correct manner. And I do think that the Patriots, with their current setup, you can include Elliot Wolf in there, the general manager, and everybody that Vrabel has brought in the front office, coaching staff, they know exactly what they're looking for. They know that you better have that in you. It's harder to find that player. All right, Ryan Wilson chiming in. Good to see you, Ryan. He says, I thought the Jets would be the biggest challenge to Buffalo this season. That's on pause now for me. Yeah, Aaron Glenn. I mean, he comes from that Detroit Lions world where, you know, you need a tough-minded player. And I think that defensively, what they were able to do in Detroit was so admirable last year. Everybody going down, yet they're still competitive, still winning 15 games. It's easy to forget when they got wiped out by Washington in that divisional round. How good they were in the regular season, despite losing Aiden Hutchinson, Alex Anzalone, Aleem McNeil, everybody that they did on defense. Hell, I was talking to Jamal Adams in that locker room at one point for an hour. It's crazy that they're relying on a Jamal Adams for 15 snaps. That says a lot about Aaron Glenn. And it says a lot about his ability to maximize everything he can out of a player. I just worry about the offense. I mean, what in the hell is the plan at quarterback if you're the New York Jets? Justin Fields, there's a lot to love. He's going to work hard in ways that maybe the current Bears quarterback does not. But he's got the processing issues. He's got the accuracy issues. What did he complete? 3 passes against the Bills this past week. Now he's got the concussion. Now they're starting Tyrod Taylor. I don't really know what the plan is at quarterback. And that's fine, though. Like, I think that's okay. The Lions didn't really know what their plan was when they took over. Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, they are more so taking on Jared Goff as collateral damage for the draft picks. And, you know, they didn't know if he was going to be the long-term answer. They didn't have much talent on their offense. They lost a lot of games in year one, but they knew what they wanted to be identity-wise. And eventually that saw the light of day. Right? They started 4-19-1. 4-19-1. I mean, people are calling for Dan Campbell's job, Brad Holmes. It was ugly, but I think you saw the makings of something built to last in Detroit. So that's probably the upside for a team like the Jets. Just how does it look? Like, are guys fighting in the fourth quarter of a December game when everything's lost? And you saw that out of Dan Campbell's lines. I do think in New England, as opposed to the Jets, there's a little more hope because quarterback. I mean, out of that entire draft class, I'd probably go Jaden Daniels 1. He already looks like a superstar, although, the first 2 games have been a little rocky, and now he's going to miss this Sunday with an injury. I'd go with Drake Maye right after that. I think athletically, physically, the things that he can do, he's got a high ceiling. But on top of that, he has the work ethic that you need to run this offense. And Josh McDaniels is a hard coach. You talk to players in Vegas who had him, it's not always pretty. So I can't imagine being his quarterback, somebody who coached Tom Brady, who butted heads with Tom Brady, how demanding he must be behind the scenes. So to get that coaching and by all accounts respond the right way, I think is very encouraging because you saw last week that was the best game of his career, 19-23, and it would have even been better than that without some drops. Throwing it to the backs, the tight ends, the receivers. He was accurate. I mean, there's a play, I think it was a Ramondre Stevenson wheel route up the right sideline late in the game where the aforementioned Morgan Moses, he's playing through an injury. He gets beat. Jalen Phillips is right in Drake Maye's face, and he doesn't flinch. And I think in that position, you see so many 22 and 23-year-olds, they do flinch. They panic. They try to run backwards, sideways. They turtle for a sack. They don't stand in there and deliver a pass to an open receiver. He's making those kind of plays, which is really encouraging. All right, Charlie. Always, if this is the same Charlie I think it is, it's great to see it, man. Tyler, since you're the tight end authority, tell us about Jackson Hawes. I'm crazy excited, and I hope that's not just fan goggles. Dude, I'm right there with you. Watching that game last night, it's hard to take your eye off the ball, especially when Josh Allen is the quarterback, because he is so entertaining and fun as hell and the best player in football. And he had the flip to Jackson Hawes for the touchdown. Watch Jackson Hawes on a play-to-play basis. You're talking about a freaking blocking tight end from Yale and Georgia Tech who barely caught the ball at all in college. He gets under people's skin in a way that you rarely see in football. He's a gnat. He's playing through the echo of the whistle. That's how Mike Mularkey would put it to his old Steeler tight ends. I think it was Mark Bruner told us that for Blood and Guts, that he wanted guys to keep fighting through the whistle. And you don't see quite as much of that in 2025. Jackson Hall certainly does. I mean, there were plays. He's hitting one body, and then he's moving on to a second body, and he's driving you. He's driving you nuts. I think it was that Ravens game. Same deal. You isolate on him. He is pissing people off. Play to play. I mean, to bring him in as another blocking tight end and also know that he can catch a ball here and there. I mean, he bobbled it, but he had the big catch against the Ravens in the opener. He caught a touchdown this past week. So just the fact that there's at least a parcel of unpredictability, the defense has to respect him to an extent as a receiver, in addition to him being just an old school blocking tight end who is going to drive you into the dirt. That is a rarity in pro football. And obviously it plays into every coordinator talks about wanting to be multiple. That's the buzzword, multiple. We want to be able to play in this package and that package. The Bills are genuinely multiple. They're the one team that can toggle between any play style you could want. And you couldn't always say that about the Bills. You sure as hell couldn't say it a few years back when they lost in that snow globe to the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs, right? For years and years, it was, we just have to get one of these teams at Highmark, get them in that stadium, and you can get to a Super Bowl. They did. They got the Bengals, and they were the team that was punked. They were the team that was pushed around. I mean, I remember talking to defensive players about that, the makeup of that roster. One prominent defensive starter said, yeah, it's funny that we all talk about wanting to get these home games, and we were built for a dome. We weren't built to play in the conditions that we live in every day. And, to their credit, Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, they actively went about building a team that can, they can spread you out. They can throw it all over the place, but they can play tough. They can bring in a third tight end. They can have a fullback. They can run power. And I think it takes everybody kind of being on the same page, from being in player acquisition to, McDermott. We've criticized him in the past for chiming in offensively and imposing his will at times when, maybe he shouldn't, because Josh Allen and that offense, they're flying high. He had a point on being able to play with some physicality, and he has a coordinator in Joe Brady who's bringing that to life. And now they've got a tight end and Jackson Hawes who can come in and bully people, push people around. And it is Charlie. All right. I won't say your last name because you're a prominent Charlie out there in the city doing your thing in journalism. I've said too much. Good to see you, man. Any other questions? Just fire away here. We'll get to it. I have an 8-hour drive back to Western New York momentarily. Got to get back to those 3 kids, being a dad, husband, all that good stuff. But it was very productive. We got a lot done. Not to give away too much, but out of the Bears series, we obviously talked to a lot of people about Drake Maye and the Patriots. They were a team at the top of that draft as well. So, I want to do another inner working story on what is really going on behind the scenes. And I think that there's a lot here when it comes to a team in the Patriots. The end of Belichick was ugly. I did talk to somebody about his relationship with a certain Jordan Hudson. And that was going on a little earlier than most realize, I think. And it's kind of gross to even talk about with sources. But I suppose we kind of have to an extent. But it was bad. It is crazy to me too, guys. Greatest coach of all time, Bill Belichick. But as a general manager, as a personnel decision maker, not good. His drafts were ugly. I think that there is an art to both professions. It's very different. And it is kind of good to have a little separation of church and state in that regard. Now, the GM and the head coach, they still got to be in lockstep. You got to know what you're looking for, but evaluating is so much different than coaching. I think the Patriots realized that in a hurry. And then obviously Drake Maye was a disaster. I was in his contract that he would be the successor to Bill Belichick, much to the surprise of many people in the organization. They did not know that was going on. And he was in over his head. Clearly, they did lose a lot of close games, but just a lot of egregious errors on and off the field out of Mayo. And I think Vrabel's coming in and he is really identifying which players fit what he wants his team to be. And if you can't fit, you're going to find out in a hurry, and you probably won't be here too long. So this is a transition year, but it's also a year where I think that they could be a sneaky contender to join that 44% club and make the playoffs. Why not when you look at their schedule? First things first, they got Aaron Rodgers, the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. And we'll see, if Drake Maye can take advantage of a Steelers defense that has some vulnerabilities. I think that the makeup of this team is great. We sat down with Carlton Davis a couple years ago. He's a cornerback they paid a lot of money for, grown up in South Florida. I know you may remember that story. He said there'd be youth football games. You've got people gambling on your games as a kid, where shootouts would just break out, and he's hitting the deck to avoid the bullets. He grew up with friends who are in jail for life or dead for killing people. I mean, the shit that he's seen is unbelievable to even wrap your head around. But then you talk to him as a football player and you see how it hardened him as a cornerback out there on an island on your own, getting in somebody's face and pushing him around. Those are the kind of guys. Milton Williams up front. He's been a monster through 2 games. And that was kind of an unknown in Philadelphia when you've got Jalen Carter there, Josh Sweat, all the different D linemen that they rotate through. How good is Milton Williams on his own? I think he's proven 2 games in he can play. They've got a good thing working. And then we'll see. They got the Steelers here, then the Panthers, and then a showdown with the Buffalo Bills in prime time, which could be an interesting game. It'll be a good litmus test for the Patriots and the Bills. I mean, they're a wagon right now. They're rolling. I think when you talk about the best teams in football, the Bills and Packers are right there. I know it's been ugly for the Eagles, but they're the defending champs. Would love to hear what you think. As a tease, I want to throw this in there for those on the Substack Live. Our Zoom happy hours will be back next week. I'm thrilled about this. We've had so much going on at Go Long the last few years. I've kind of gotten away from just bringing on former players and letting you hang out and ask them anything you want. We want to bring you as close as possible to this sport. So I apologize for that. We've had in the past Jamal Lewis, TJ Lang, got Richie Incognito, Warren Moon. So, Andy Janovich was a fun one. Wyatt Teller. We've had a lot of different current and former players on. I've got one scheduled for next week. Allen Robinson, the former wide receiver, will be joining us on Zoom. So grab your favorite beverage, pull up a seat, and ask Allen anything you'd like. He is an open book. One of the more cerebral, smarter wide receivers I've ever talked to covering the sport. And he's, most importantly, he's unafraid. I mean, as a current player, he was breaking down his contract situation with us and how unhappy he was there in Chicago. But he'll let us know what it's like on the inside. So really looking forward to having Allen on. That's for our paid subscribers. So, subscribe if you don't. $8 a month, $50 for the year, and you'll get access to those Zoom happy hours where you can just hang out with players yourself virtually. All right, we do have one more here. Istanbul Jake, always good to see you, brother. Tyler, who are your top 5 backup quarterbacks in the league? And considering the injuries, do you think good backups are going to start getting multi-year deals worth $5 to $7 a year? Whew. Boy, top of the head, top 5 backups. I'm just going to do a cop-out and say I'm just really excited about Jake Browning right now in Cincinnati. I was stunned that teams, maybe they were sending Cincinnati offers and Cincinnati didn't see anything they liked, but it made too much sense for a trade to not go down. You see the Steelers just going all in on Aaron Rodgers and, the Jets are going the Justin Fields route. I don't know. I mean, Jake Browning went 4-3 a couple years ago when Joe Burrow went down. And one of those losses, he took the Chiefs to the brink. Yeah, you get the full experience. He threw 3 picks against Jacksonville last week, but he also scored 3 touchdowns. He's got balls. He's going to push the ball down the field. He's not your typical clipboard clutching backup, just kind of happy to be there. He's going to go out there and try to make plays. He's thrown for more yards, touchdowns, and completions than anybody in California high school football history, anybody at the University of Washington. So he's productive. He just is, just never really had the ideal size, never really had the ideal arm strength. But I think that Cincinnati, I don't know why everybody is writing this team off and giving Zach Taylor hell. I think Zach Taylor he built a Joe Burrow friendly offense. And yeah, he took hits, but yeah, you want Joe Burrow extending those plays and keeping his eyes downfield because he does it better than anybody in the sport. I don't know why you neuter that from your offense at all. And it does come at a cost. Look, the wrist injury was a freak injury. Nobody this century at the quarterback position has suffered that injury before. And then you look at the toe this past week, it's kind of a routine sack. Long-winded way of saying I think they'll build an offense for Jake Browning and that will suit his strengths. Quick trigger, getting the ball out, also taking shots deep. And all he really has to do is go 6-4, 7-3 by the time Joe Burrow comes back. And Joe Burrow finishes 3-1? They're right there. I think that Cincinnati figures out a way to stay in it. Ronald says, love the McGinn participation. Only one. Bob, I totally agree. I will have Bob. As long as he wants to talk and write about football, he will be here with us at Go Long. All right. Oh, I just lost your comments, guys. Oh, there's Joshua. Do you think Washington would go for a trade or anything after getting $14.5 million in cap space after restructuring Laramie Tunsil's contract? Thank you. Love your work. Yeah. That's news to me. I've been here talking to Patriot players at Gillette, but I think that if they're moving money around, that tells you everything you need to see. Something's coming. Like they're doing that for a reason. They made the move for Deebo Samuel. They made the move for Laramie Tunsil. They've been aggressive as they should be. They probably do see where they're deficient. It was such a test against Green Bay at Lambeau Field where they kind of ran into a buzzsaw, Micah Parsons and everything going on defensively for Green Bay. Maybe they do see a target. Also, in a couple of weeks, that's when some of these teams decide, all right, we can win this year or we have to look toward 2026. I would be surprised if Washington didn't make a move, whatever that may be. All right. Oh, we got one more. Sorry, Ronald. He says, do you think the Packers will add a wide receiver by trade? I don't know. I think they love the youth that they have. I'm looking forward to seeing Matthew Golden. He was, inches away from a 96-yard touchdown. Love has to put a little more air under. They are so close to hitting some of those deep balls. I think that between Golden, Savion Williams, and these two rookies, their roles are going to grow week to week in that offense, and it'll be fun to watch. There's still a lot of room for Love to grow as well as he's playing. That's going to be it. I have to drive back home. Thank you so much for hanging out here on Substack Live, and be sure to email me anytime, golongtd@substack.com. And like I said, join our Zoom happy hour next week. We'll have Alan Robinson on. It'll be a hell of a good time. Thanks so much, everyone.